Good afternoon. Welcome to the Good Life Meditation for today. Doing things a little backwards, doing it in the afternoon rather than the morning. Interesting experiment. Usually, hopefully it's an interesting experiment. Usually I do this in the morning, which is a good primer and readiness for the day. And in fact, I did it this morning, although in an abbreviated, truncated form, because I ran out of time. I'm doing another video series in the morning, and it just, even though my commute is a long commute, it just was, the other video series was cutting into this time. So let's get started. I feel a little winded. Open this up. This helmet's so good it's almost claustrophobic. There we go. So this is what I do every day to remind myself of my objectives and principles, and to rehearse them, and to go over them in my mind, or out loud actually, so that I'm aware of what they are and I can check them out and I keep them foremost in my mind. And it really does work that way. I find that if I say these things out loud, they remain immediate in my head. I don't have to, if I don't do this, sometimes I remember the objective or principle after the opportunity to use it has passed. When I do this routinely, especially when I do it the way I'm doing it right now, it tends to be there in the moment as the need arises. So then I've got the tool. So it's like the difference between having a toolbox that you keep on the shelf, on the tool bench, versus the tools that are hanging on my waist on a tool belt, right there, ready to use. And to get over here into the carpool lane, we can get up to some speed. I'll close the the visor, as soon as I get up to speed. So the first objective is to be always ready to die. Am I ready to die today? This is the fun thing about doing it in hindsight. The day is almost over. Was today a good day? Let's go over the day a little bit. Oh, I like that. Was today a good day to die? How about financially? Well, I brought in a good day's income. That's always helpful. Last week, or actually earlier in the week, I signed up for a new deferred compensation program to help with my retirement. That's in addition to the pension, Social Security, and my 401k. So trying to round out as many of these as possible. And I'm on track to retire in 13 years. And that'll be full retirement. No more working for the rest of my life. We'll see what happens. I'm working hard at that. But there's also the immediate financial stuff. I think so. Our budget's good. I've got my expenditures down to a good ratio. I've got my housing expenditures down to a very good, in line with the percentage that it should be, which is a tricky one given where I live. How about my relationships? Think that's pretty good. Had a nice dinner with the family last night. We talked about things. I'm taking more of a proactive role in some of the planning that we're doing. Of course, I'm not just deciding outright, but I'm deciding to be a little more proactive to make sure that things happen. Mainly things that I think we should do as a family. For example, it's almost time for Emily to start getting ready for college, and I want to make sure that we can take her to visit different colleges. So I'm kind of just leading the way, saying, how about if we go visit this college this particular weekend, and I'll make all the arrangements. First, I'm making sure the family's on board with that. So, and I think we're in good shape. If I don't make it home tonight, I don't think there's really anything remains to be said between us. I was listening to some good Stoic stuff today, talking about that, being able to, it was Epictetus and the Enchiridion, and he has that one passage where he talks about, getting off a ship and amusing yourself with an onion or a shellfish, all the while minding the call from the captain that the ship's going to depart, so that you can hurry back to the ships in a moment's notice. And of course, the ship and the captain's call are death. And because he reminds us that if we don't come back, we will be brought back bound in trust, like a sheep. And of course, that's the fact that no matter how much we might want to resist death, when it comes, we will go, either kicking or screaming, or we will go with equanimity and balance. And I think that I could, and he talked about turning our back on, particularly he said, our our wife and child, and without looking back. I think I could do that right now. It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to be tested at it. And then finally, the art. I'm just reading through the 5th edition of Going Alone. I'm pleased with it. I've got a few minor edits to do, but I could go out with just that alone. That's my life's work. Life's work is going alone. I would be quite pleased, and even if nobody ever reads it, except just maybe it's a dusty old copy is handed down in my family for a few generations, and maybe catches the interest of a descendant, 3 generations down, and might be so inclined as I to wonder at the nothingness and what to make of that awful landscape of the vista of nihilism. Is nihilism can have a vista? Next, number 2, to make good use of time. How about today? Did I make good use of time at work? I laid out when I got to work before my computer was starting up. I laid out 8 things that I had to do today. I starred 3 of them that absolutely were essential, and I did indeed touch on each one of those. And more importantly, I made good use of time between those events, in between my meetings. I'm lucky that I work in a job that I'm not minded. It means what I mean by that is no one's really watching after me. I could easily slack off if I wanted to, but of course, I'm my most diligent overseer, and I don't want to do that. I find I end the day in a pretty foul spirits if I've indulged in that at all. Even so much as to make sure that my breaks don't go over even a minute. I know that's maybe too much to worry about, but I find I feel better about myself if that's the case. And today was a very good day for that. Had a couple of moments where I was just kind of run down between meetings or a real cerebral activity and kind of had to recoup myself, but that's okay. I think that's part of the process. And now I got out of work right at time. Interesting, I was talking to someone about our breaks, and I get 2 20-minute breaks a day, and it's very important that I take those 20 minutes. That's my time after all. That's the time that I can actually shut off the work and turn on whatever it is that I want to do. And so I did do that. That's a good use of time as well. Just powering through my breaks would not be a good use of my time in my particular perspective. And now I'm going to go home. I'm making good use of time on this commute right now, doing this activity right here. When I get home, I'll upload this video and another one that I did this morning. Then I will take a swim. I'll take the dog for a nice long walk, about an hour. Then I'll come home and I'll have dinner with my wife and daughter and talk about our upcoming trip to Humboldt. And then I'll go to bed and have a good use of time sleeping, a full 8 hours. Yeah, that's a good use of time. Maybe somewhere in there I'll throw in a coffee. So, yeah, I think I'm getting that down. If I do say so myself. Sorry if I'm sounds like I'm congratulating myself. I should be trying to pick out moments that I didn't have a good use of time, but I think today was a pretty damn good day, as most of them are becoming, because of this activity. Number 3, the development and maintenance of good, sound life principles. That's exactly what I'm doing right now. It took me over a year to assemble this 6 and 20, and now I work on them every day, only doing minor changes. In fact, the version, I give them like software numbers. The previous version I was on was, I call this a human operating system. I was on HOS version 19, and I changed one thing this week, so I had revved it up on a point release to 19.1. And for the life of me, I can't remember what it was I did, but that's not good. If I'm going to change it, I got to remember what I changed. It's recorded, so I'll take a look. I think I recorded it. Here comes a bike. And next, the cultivation of good emotional reactions. Just reacting well to every circumstance around that occurs throughout the day. To use the word of the poet, not the poets, but the Stoics, to want nothing more than what is happening. And if that is the case, then I am always receiving what I want. And there should be no reason to be upset. That idea is really taking hold recently, and it's really pretty tough for any circumstance at work to upset me, or any pain in my body, or no, let's see what happens when cancer finally arrives, or if it does, or something, a stroke or something like that. Let's see if I can how long I can hold that up. But it's good practice. I mean, it's like in the minor leagues right now. The major league stuff is on its way, I'm sure. See how I hold up with that. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I realized that I could actually, if I'm coughing or sneezing, I could lift the visor on the helmet to give myself some breathing room, coughing room, sneezing room, and I'll do that if I remember, if I have time. Here we go. There, I hope that worked. Now, next, the performance of good actions, just doing good things through the day, little things, tiny things. I picked up and big things too. I picked up a screw I found on the side of the road this morning while I was walking, and that's a good deed because that's going to end up in someone's tire and really make them have a bad day. So hopefully I did something good there. I'm not doing this to bring out self-congratulations again or anyone to say nice things, but like there was a homeless woman on the street by my bike, and I went into my panniers, and I keep all my camping gear there, and I got out a nice warm big comfy sweater and gave that to her, and she was really happy about that. That felt good. I thought long and hard about how I could help her more, and I was unsuccessful in finding a way that I could do that in the immediate moment, and I promised myself to think more about it. And I did other things too, and I should also recognize other people doing likewise. I will try to work on that, because it's nice to point out that as well. Although the main purpose of these objectives and principles is I'm not placing these, expecting others to do anything like this. These are my own guides and rules. So I guess I'm trying to get away from the sense of being selfish if I just talk about myself. But like Thoreau said, I would fain, in Walden, he said, I would fain talk so much about myself if there were anybody else I knew so well. Yeah, likewise. Next, the recognition of true limits and true opportunity. What is it that I can and cannot do, and what is it that I can do? I can't empathize with what it's like to be a woman. So I don't know what their pain, what the things that make them cry or hurt or suffer. But I can listen with an attentive ear to what women say and what they tell me is important to them. And I can be more sympathetic in that capacity, if not empathetic. There's an example of recognizing true limits and true opportunity. Now let's get on to the 20 principles. The first is the principle of war. To rise in the morning, put on my armor, my sword, my sling, whatever the case may be, and all the instruments of my principles and objectives, all those implements, and go to war with everything that I hold true, including the very instruments of battle, and also to go to war with everything you hold true too. So I do this video series called the Freeway Bible Study. That's that one that's competing in the morning, and it's getting pretty good views. I mean, not many comments, but an averaging on Facebook, a good same number every day, and on YouTube, a little less each day on YouTube. It is definitely hitting my subscriber count there, but I'm sure, because people who know me know that I'm not a believer, so they must be very suspicious of what the heck I am up to, having these Bible studies, 25-minute long videos a day on a single chapter of the Bible. That must be really suspicious. And that's an example of me going to war with what you believe if you're a Christian. And even though I don't couch it in such language, I am doing that. But please understand, if you're one of them, this is the same thing that I do with my own stuff. So I'm not holding your beliefs to any greater scrutiny than I would my own. It's just the way I operate. So to that end, let's scrutinize one of my beliefs. Let's pick the principle of last time I did it was the home of good and evil. So that means the next one is the principle of purpose. So So the principle of purpose is, for me, I have that. So I'm trying to take it apart now. Okay, this is the very thing I'm trying to do when I read the Bible. I'm looking at it, and then I'm going to try to take it apart. So I look at, I have a principle called the principle of purpose because I encountered this thing called the great indifference, which made me realize that there is no absolute purpose out there except for the purpose of biology, of life, to stay alive and reproduce. So that seems clear, a clear mandate. But that mandate comes from within. It's the nature of the beast, the necessity of the machine that is our biological system. So what else? So if that's the case, is that it? So I've already fulfilled that. I've got a kid. She's almost an adult. Can I go ahead and die now? No, I need to stay alive long enough to make sure she's viable and to help out for a while, and then I can go. But I want more. So I decided I define my own principles, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So the principle of purpose is a way for me to recognize that the universe does not seem to have any purpose outside of survival and reproduction, and then to augment that mean principle with a principle of my own definition, which I've done. So what is the pro in that? The pro in that is that it causes me to recognize reality, and then also gives me a chance to have something that gives me meaning in my life, rather than just wandering around without any meaning. What are the cons in that? Well, with many of these things, the con may be that I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, then I'm way off base. If indeed there is a God, and that God has the purpose to recognize and request forgiveness and then obedience, if that's a Christian God, or if it's a Jewish God, to simply follow the commandments or and do whatever it is that the Yahweh wants, or if you're Ahura Mazda or Allah, whatever other gods are, and do whatever they want, then I'm missing the boat. So that would be a con. But that's one of the reasons I read the Bible and all these other things, and after I'm done reading the Bible, I'll read the Quran and do the same thing, the freeway Quran study, and then the Bhagavad Gita, and then the maybe the Code of Hammurabi. Who knows? So yeah, I think it's a worthwhile thing, this principle of purpose. So next, 4 is the homunculus. Homunculus is just a word it's an old word. I think it's pretty old. It kind of, imagine a man or a little man or a woman inside your head. They're running the show. You could open your skull, and there they would be blinking at you. Of course, there isn't something like that, but I use that imagery to kind of give an image to consciousness, which can't really seem to be tied down to a particular thing. It's like the emergent state of an electrified brain. A liver functions by virtue. Well, it's the same way. A liver functions by virtue of its operation. Without that, it's just a pile of proteins, right, and amino acids. Likewise, the brain. So hey, but it seems different in some way. And I want to remind myself that it doesn't appear to be different in any spiritual or supernatural way. There's no reason to think that there's an invisible, immortal soul that's somehow connected or independent of it or a part of it that floats away and we lose 6 grams of weight when it goes away. There's no reason to believe any of that's true. So if that's the case, then I want to remind myself through the imagery of the homunculus that this thing that I am will pass away and die and rot and decompose and be gone forever, never to come back ever again, except in terms of being reconstituted into other life forms. But then it won't be me. It'll be something else, some pieces of me all made up into something else. Certainly no consciousness. At least no one's given us any reason to think that's the case. Next is the home of good and evil. That's number 4. If the homunculus is our consciousness, good and evil seem to be opinions and observations of the homunculus, attitudes of the homunculus. Simply trying to say that there's no reason to think that a good and evil, definitions of these good and evil, there are no 10 commandments floating about in space. The Ark of the Covenant seems to be nothing more than a story. Right and wrong are perceptions. That's why they're so different. That's why we have people that have such varying ideas about what constitutes right or wrong or good and evil. So it's up to us then to work on that, to do the hard work of thinking it through for ourselves. Thou shalt not kill. What does kill define? What does kill mean? What does thou shalt not kill? If we're going to use that language, is kill different from murder? And why? Why shall you not kill? And why should you want to not kill? Asking ourselves all those questions. That's hard work. It would be much easier if we could just point to an engraved set of commandments. Oh, pardon me, how gross, sorry. An engraved set of commandments in front of the courthouse and say, do that. That's lazy. That's not using our brains. Next is the atomic principle, number 6. I guess that was number 5 before. Number 6 is atomic principle. Everything in the universe is atoms, molecules, and compounds, all that stuff, right? And it's all just we're scaffolding of elements, and those scaffoldings have a tendency to come apart and be put back together, always in a decreasing the amount of order in the universe. So too you and I. Very soon I'll be dead, and my body will rot or burn up, and be reused in some other way, but I'll be gone. Next, the principle of nature. Everything in the universe has some nature, and it's good to recognize that that's true, and to recognize what the nature of those things are. Let's pick something. Golf course. There's a golf course right there. It's the nature of a golf course to occupy usually several acres, unless it's a mini putt-putt, and to usually have areas that are divided into holes, where a game unfolds in a sequential order from the first hole to maybe the 9th or the 18th hole, depending on the size of the course or the game. And they have various things to make it interesting, like sand traps and trees and all kinds of things like that. And there's a protocol and a procedure and even a somewhat of a dress code for this. Excuse me, I have to scratch my nose. And golf courses require a great deal of engineering, upkeep, and cost. They have a lot of water going in, a lot of pest control, and they tend to make us human beings, at least those that like to play golf, somewhat happy for the process, or at least engaged, or help facilitate our business efforts. That seems to be the nature of a golf course. If I recognize that nature, then I can understand things. Like I understand that it takes a lot of money to keep a golf course up. So I want to go play golf. I shouldn't be surprised when they want $40 for a round of golf, right? Or I shouldn't be surprised when I see a bunch of business people actually conducting business on the golf course, as golf courses seem to have been utilized for that cause. That's developed up as a part of them. It's in nature. You see the point? So I do that with everything, as I go into especially at work, going into every meeting, I ask myself the nature of the room we're going to be in, or does it face the sunny windows? Do I need to pull the shades, set the atmosphere? Because usually I run meetings as a project manager. So I get in there, I usually reserve a room half hour early so I can get in there, get set up, make sure all the electronics are working, I organize all the chairs, and rehearse. It's like setting up for a production. Yeah, that's how they work. I find my meetings go much better that way, and also asking myself about the nature of all the people that will be in there, including my own nature on that particular day. Maybe I'm not feeling so good, and my nature has changed. Maybe I should call off or postpone the meeting. Maybe I should simply adjust it and ask a team member to run it. All kinds of things. Next, principle of maturity. Maturity is that state of having experience and the willpower to do things according to our experience. Trial and error reveal what works and what doesn't work. But sometimes we don't have the willpower to do that, even though we know better. And so it really doesn't do you much good to have that wisdom if you don't have the fortitude to do it. So I want to try to couple those both together. Gain my experience, remind myself constantly about my failings or my successes, and then ask myself to try to have the strength of will to push through those things, to maintain that, to keep my eye on the prize, to use a term. Next, the social principle. Everything, not everything. Human beings were social animals, and we do need each other very much. And we will die, if not in fact, at least in spirit, if we don't have one another. And even a guy like me, who would maybe seem pretty antisocial, I am social, and I know that it's necessary. So I try to. You can amplify virtue, the pursuit of virtue, by doing things that are more social in nature, that benefit the many rather than the individual. I mean, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do the things that benefit you and just a few, but if you can do something that you get a lot of mileage by benefiting many, oh, good for you. That's why I like working in the public sector. I like the job that I do benefits many in very real and tangible ways, and I can actually, like that homeless woman I was talking about yesterday, the work that I do will definitely benefit her, and I love that. I love that. If I can get our computer systems, our county computer systems working better and more efficiently, there's less time she'll be suffering on the streets. That's a good thing. Next, the Feast of Offal, number 10. Offal, O-F-F-A-L, is that what's left over when a butcher slaughters an animal. And it's like, well, they can either throw it away, or they can grind it into sausages, or do something with it. If you make it into dog food or cat food. But you usually wouldn't want to just come by afterwards and pick up an ear and start chewing on that one, pick out the hairs and everything and the earwax. You know, you wouldn't want that. Gross. So what we do instead is we avoid it. We wouldn't go into a butcher shop and do that. They'd have to dress it up and make it into a nice sausage first. But for some reason, the waste and byproduct of our living, you know, the anger and frustration and passion that gets spilled out from us, we consume that up from one another. I'll be sitting with a group of people, and one of them is being a son of a gun. And for some reason, I'm chewing up all his offal that he's spilling out. And guess what? It makes me sick and ill, and I start bursting out some offal myself. And then everybody else is chewing it. And before long, we're having a real disgusting party going on, and we pass it along. That's what we do for some reason. So I try to remind myself of two things. One, to not throw out my own offal from my own poor living. So you hold it in. You'll find a better way to handle it. And two, when I see other people dispensing theirs, to not partake of that disgusting feast, and simply let the filth pass by, and then I won't be contaminated myself. Gosh, that kind of sounds almost religious, doesn't it? It's not my intent. I think it's factual. I think it's real. And that dovetails into just a moment into the principles of temperance, and I'll get to apathy in just a second. That's actually the next one. Temperance, number 11, is the controlled consumption of all things. I like to say food, drink, work, play, sex, just everything and anything. You know, not having too many helpings of food, not going for a medium or small soda instead of that jumbo big gulp. You know, choosing to go in investments, going for a more moderate return rather than the super aggressive return, hoping for the big capital win, or day trading and gambling at all, unless you've got those resources and you're willing to do that. You know, that's what's such a good example is usually it's stuff that we're indulging in because the thrill of it masks our deeper, you know, anxiety about the nature of the world and purpose of life. You know, if we can come to it, you know, the fact that there appears to be no God and no afterlife, and if we can distract ourselves with indulging in going to a great rave and the music's so good and the colors and the drugs and all that kind of stuff, then death is never on the mind. So I try to avoid overdoing anything, and as a consequence, death is on the mind, which I find to be a great thing to do that. I try to begin the day, pass the day, and conclude the day with death on the mind. My death, my wife's death, my daughter's death, and the death of everyone I love. It sounds morbid. I don't talk too much about that in the in this particular meditation, but it is an important thing. I should talk more about death and thinking about it. Next is and there are three sub-principles of temperance: suffering, simplicity, and apathy. Suffering because we suffer when we deny ourselves what we want. Simplicity because we living a simple life is a temperate life. And apathy because apathy is a superpower to be able to recognize what is and what is not within our control, and then to moderate our, how we're affected out, accordingly. I don't have much control about this traffic. It's not going to help one iota if I get upset about this. There's nothing I can do about it. So the only thing I can control is my reaction, and I choose to exercise a good control over that by not getting upset. I'm apathetic towards whether I'll have my job tomorrow. It doesn't mean I'm not going to plan for not having a job, but I will. If it happens, I won't be too upset about it. I'll just go ahead and proceed to move along. I'm wanting nothing more than what happens to happen. And I know that sounds, the way I'm saying it, kind of sounds like this fatalism, like you're just resigning yourself to, oh, whatever, c'est la vie, whatever, come what may, but it's not. It's actively making the world a better place, which is something we can control, we can do. We can control our very actions, but at the same time recognizing that there are some factors that are outside of our control, and we cannot control those particular things. You know what, I'm going to start publishing these videos over on my Stoic page, because I think they're covering a lot of Stoicism. So I'll put this one up there today. I've got that on Facebook. There's the Stoic Life page. It's very good. I'm going to add these. Next, sorry. Next is the what is next? After Temperance. Oh, agency and the great indifference. Everything that's alive is an agent. An agent, of course, is simply an individual of some sort, and even plants are agents, even if they're not conscious. And they have their products that they create, their products of agency. When you take all that away, subtract out all this life, including you and me, we're left with the indifferent landscape of nature. And the key word there is indifferent. It just doesn't give a dang about us. And that's what I call the great indifference, agency and the great indifference. The great indifference is recognizing a universe without God, a universe that doesn't care. And then a response to that is, instead of nihilism, we turn to, well, heck, I'm going to turn to the ones that I care. They care. My fellows, my friends, my family, my loved ones, all those, even all these people on the freeway, they care. If I got in an accident, people will pull over and help me out. I mean, that's we do. We have one another. If I break my leg deep out in the desert, the stones are going to watch with a stony silence while I writhe in pain and eventually, what's the word? Suffocate in the desert. Dehydrate and die. Next is Path of the best seat in the house. Should not want to be anyone else, be anywhere else, or be doing anything else, but to be okay with who I am, where I am, and what I'm doing, all the while trying to make the life a better life better for myself and others. It's a delicate balance between accepting things as they are and working toward making things better. Again, that application of apathy is key there. Next is the Path of Wildness. It's a way to get unstuck. This is something I developed in Japan after so many young people would write to me, mostly in their 20s, mostly men for the most part, but there were women too, complaining about their dreams that they have and their inability to make that dream happen because of their anxiety, whether they wanted to come to Japan and live an adventurous life or learn a new language or go to college or whatever, and people in their life were telling them, no, that's not practical, sane, or sound, but they wanted to do it anyway, or they just couldn't make up a mind. They didn't have enough information, and so what I found is that about I would say in the 90 percentile never did anything, or at least they kind of faded away and never let me know. And about 5%, 10% would write to me later and did something about it. And I noticed there was a difference between the two. The ones that did it typically took all the facts that they could, gave themselves a little bit of time to think about it, and then made a decision. Even if they didn't have all the facts yet where they would like to have, they allowed themselves to be informed of their gut feeling. And invariably, that led them into an adventure of one sort or another. Sometimes they were hurt along the ways. Sometimes they succeeded. Always, they wound up more mature if they survived. And so far, nobody's died. And I think that's why I think even the risk, if you're talking first world individuals, I mean, the risks are minimal. What was that sound? Did I hear a sound? I'm gonna get over in case my bike's making noise. It's an old bike after all, almost 100,000 miles. If it dies, then I'm gonna get another bike. I don't want it to die though. I love this bike. Hope to have it for another 100,000. So the recommendation with the Path of Wildness is to think I heard something again. Is to recognize when a decision needs to be made, to allocate some time to think about it, and when that time is up, to either give ourselves more time if we need it, or to make a decision. But eventually it comes a point where, enough's enough. It's time to make a decision. And even if you don't have enough facts, allow yourself to be informed of your gut feeling. Right, left, up, down, forward, back. Marry me or don't marry me, whatever the case may be, yes or no. And recognizing that you may make a mistake because you're basically using some gut feeling on that. But also recognize that there's virtue in moving forward rather than spending an inordinate amount of time, precious time that you don't have an eternity of waiting for something to happen. I don't hear it anymore. I hope the bike's okay. So I'm closer to the edge of the road here, just in case. Now, next is the risk of avoiding risk. Early on in life, our friends, family, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles all tell us, in your 20s, go to college, find a girl, find a boy, settle down, get a job, start saving money, and buy some life insurance, and then have some kids, and take a vacation once a year. And it's good advice, but in doing so, you're kind of settling for the safe and sane, the sober route. Not settling may not be the word. There's a lot of people to whom that's exactly what they want. So I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the others that say, yeah, I want something more. I want adventure. I want experience. I want language. I want to study something that's not very practical. Whatever the case may be. And I simply want to tell you that if you neglect that too long, you're probably going to find yourself midlife with a nice house, a nice job, a nice family, a vacation in Honolulu every year, maybe the same condo you go to every year, but something's missing. You feel like your youth just kind of passed by, and gosh darn it, it's time for your midlife crisis, to be stereotypical, right? So I'm simply suggesting that if you got those feelings, give yourself some time to do that stuff, and I call that a great life adventure, and I'll get to that in just a moment. And I recommend specifically the decade of your 20s, the whole darn thing, from the time you graduate high school until the time you hit your 30th birthday. First, go to college, go to the college that you want to, study, and go as far as you can with the subject that interests you, even if it's not very practical. Maybe it's speech communication, which was what I studied, which turned out to be a crappy choice for getting a job, but turned out to be a great choice for doing well in whatever job I had in my life. And then once you've done with that, that'll take you a master's degree, maybe if you go so far or farther, take you to 25, 26 years old, and then you're free for 4 or 5 years. hit the road, get a sailboat, sail around the world, start doing whatever, volunteer to help out in some developing country, whether, I don't know where you're from, but if you're an American, AmeriCorps or the Peace Corps, or whatever the case may be, just become a hippie, get a guitar, hit the road, stand-up comic, I don't know what it is, but for 4 or 5 years, live that dream. Go get yourself a condo, or not a condo, but a dinky little apartment in Paris, or Brussels, or Amsterdam, or Tokyo, or Hong Kong, or Perth, or whatever. Get a surfboard on the Gold Coast of Australia, or whatever it is, and maybe do several of these things. And when you're done, you emerge from your 30s. You've got the degree in one hand. You've got long hair and a tan that you can't believe, and a smile ear to ear, and lots of laugh lines are starting to show on your face at that early age. But they're not stress lines. They're lines from deep, incessant laughter, and crying lines, because you've made a lot of mistakes, and you've hurt yourself. Maybe you've hurt other people, and you've learned a great deal of lessons. And you've that combination of joy and sorrow and experience, that then you begin the job of searching for someone to spend your life with, and a career, starting your career, working your way up, having some children, and all the rest. And I think you'll be more satisfied when you're my age, when you're in your 50s, having lived a couple of different lives. And I guarantee you, when you and your spouse go to those cocktail parties later in life, the most laughter and entertainment is going to be coming from the table wherever you are, because you're the person with the stories. You're the person that is the one that people are going to want to hang around with, because you're an interesting person. and you've lived a life, and maybe it's if you're able to couch it in benevolence, not lording it over people like, look at all the adventures I've had, coming out with all the photo albums of, I've been all these places, I've seen all these people, I've learned 3 languages, whatever the case, wrestled alligators in the Nile, or whatever it is, as long as because nobody likes an asshole, but as long as you just make it kind of a seasoning. It just kind of comes out of you. You can't help it because you're full of life. I think you're going to find that that's a pleasant life, and fewer regrets in the end. So that's the risk of avoiding risk. It's a rare person that can do both, that can address both those surface level risks and the deep level risks. Now, moving on, almost done now. The sin and damnation. In my worldview, even though I'm a non-believer, I do have concepts of sin, and they all relate to believing things that aren't true. So there are 5 sins in my worldview, and these are falsity, credulity, faith, superstition, and dogma. Falsity is simply because it's crappy to believe things that aren't true. To imagine laboring your whole life under misapprehensions, and I'm sure we all do, especially because our human knowledge is limited, but it's something we can't avoid. But if it's something that you can avoid just by exercising a little reason and an application of a little brain power to figure out if something's true or not, and to liberate yourself of an untruth, wow, yeah, definitely worthwhile. Number 2 is credulity. Credulity is a state of being where you're kind of willing to believe things that aren't true. It's nice to avoid credulity and to be incredulous, and to always be a doubting Thomas and say, well, what do I make of that? Let's think about this. Next is faith, which is the scary one, because it trots around as a virtue, and then people show it as such. They say, if you just have faith, we all have faith. Faith alone will get us there. Faith is a cheat. It's a shortcut, and it's basically, it'll get you where you want to go without the hard work of getting there. It's like playing chutes and ladders, and instead of rolling the dice and climbing on the ladders, it's just saying, I have faith I can make it to the top, and moving your piece to the top. You didn't do the hard work of getting there. And I know that people that have faith will say, well, the hard work comes in other ways, hard work of persevering through difficulty. That's all nice, but it ain't related to the fact that the thing in question needs to be proven, because faith is, as they say, the evidence of the unseen. And if the unseen is unseen, then you can't prove it. If you say it's something that you sense, I doubt that, because people use faith to arrive at conflicting conclusions. So watch out for that one. Next, superstition. It's a whole category of things that are almost by nature, we just know that they're not true, more likely to be not true, and that's why we give them the label of superstition. Ghosts, poltergeists, karma, things like that. Even if you can dress it up with some realistic sounding things, like saying karma seems to be the consequence of doing one thing and reaping that consequence later, it doesn't mean there's a causal connection. It may be in some loose sense, but still, it's in the classification of superstition. And then dogma is really nasty as well, because that's a truth that instead of doing the hard work of demonstrating itself to be true, it simply says, believe me because I say so, because it's tradition, because it's what the authority says, and look at how many believe. So so believe it for those reasons. Those are bad reasons to believe. Next, almost done now. Complete oblivion. When we die, it appears that we're completely wiped out in terms of who we are, and our bodies, of course, eventually. And that means that there's no final reunion with the ones that we leave behind or who went before, no reconciliation with anybody regarding our differences, and no final justice. If there's no afterlife and no, God, and we're not able to do it, then people who get away with evil things or good things too, they get away with it, right? I mean, get away with good things? You know what I mean. So you better seek after reunion now, and reconciliation in this life, and justice. Pursue that in the here and now as well. And there, I'm just about done. The next is the Great Life Adventure. I mentioned before about giving ourselves the decade of the 20s to have a big adventure, see things, do things, play things, make mistakes, cry, laugh, all that kind of stuff. That's the great life adventure, and I recommend a big one in your 20s, and then pepper the rest of your life with as many as you can tolerate and afford. And find someone that can tolerate that too, to the same degree that you do. It's a little tricky if you find someone that is less tolerant of that adventuresome stuff, unless they're cool with you doing it. But watch out, a lot of people will say they're cool with it, but when push comes to shove, they're not. So it's good to, when in your dating phase, mark it on the calendar. Say, you know, I'm gonna, if they're not gonna do it with him, if you've got the bent to go alone like I do, mark it on the calendar. Say, I'll be alone doing whatever the heck I'm gonna do on these days. See how it goes for a couple of years. Don't rush into marriage. See how that goes. And if you want to do it with them, great. That's even better. I'm just, you know, whatever way it goes. And then I'm done now. I'm done. The last two is the season of philosophy. That comes at a time when the words start coming. You've lived an interesting life. You've had the great life adventure. You've been educated. You've got wisdom and through maturity and wisdom and fortitude, and by virtue you've gained maturity. And now you've got something to say about it all. And I recommend start saying it. Write it down. Make a video. Turn on the tape recorder. Dance it. Write it. Paint a picture, whatever the case may be. That's your season to record what you've learned along the way. So, because really, it's only your view. I mean, it probably some similarities with others, but your view is your view. So get it out. And then watch out, because once the muse, that little voice comes, once the voice says something, suggests it's got something to say, if you wait, I mean, even 5 minutes, it's usually gone. I know that from my own experience and reading other people's experience. So I think it's part of the way we're wired. We have that one opportunity. The chemical cocktail in our brains gets into a musy state, and it passes. And what's more, whatever the muse might say in your 20s, it's going to be different in your 30s, most likely, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and also if you wait too long, your faculties will diminish, and you may still have the words in your head, but maybe you can't lift your arm anymore to write it down, or you can't open your mouth, or whatever, because of disease and old age. So watch out for that too. And then I'm done. Last one. Arena and utility. All life is arena for the execution of our objectives, principles, and everything we value in life. And all these things, these objectives and principles, are tools along the way. They hang like tools on a utility belt. And we can reach down, especially if we exercise this type of reminder on a daily basis, out loud like I did. I think I just did a 50-minute, this was 50 minutes. This is probably one of the longest I've done in a long time. And wow, if you made it here, congratulations. You will find that these things are just there, like I said before, ready at a moment's notice. It's a magical thing. And that's it. That's the Good Life meditation. And wow, I timed it just right. That's where I live, right over there at Center Point. I think usually at this time I review the day as well. I think I did that all right. So what I'm going to do now is, my daughter's not there. She's out at a concert at school. Our little doggy is there. I wonder if Emily took him for a walk. Let's see what the phone says. She didn't answer me. I'm going to, oh, you know, she did. She took Ollie for a walk, so he's already had a walkie. So I'm going to go home. I'll say hi to my little puppy doggy. Then I'm going to I'll upload a video. I'll start this video editing. Then I'll go to the pool and do a swim. Then I'll take Ollie for a super long walkie. And then I'll get home, and my wife should be just getting home. We'll have dinner. Emily will be home. I'm going to talk about our trip to Humboldt coming up. And we'll look them deep in the eyes, not in a creepy way, but in a familial way of, a father that really is glad to be with his family, because you never know, this might be the last day. And again, not in a creepy way. I don't talk to them about that kind of stuff in that way. I just let them know that I love them and that I'm glad to be with them. And I thank my wife for her wonderful cooking. Compliment my daughter on her scholastic effort, and for the fact that she's a good kid, good young woman. And to pet the dog on the head and play with him because it makes him so happy. But he brings me that little rope that he likes me to toss. Anytime he comes to me, that's a very important thing. Even if I'm in the middle of a poem, to stop and play with my little dog. It's important to do. And here's where we live. And then after that, I'll take a shower, and then I'll lay down, and I will close my eyes, and I will quickly fall asleep. And I will sleep 8 solid hours before I go back to work Wake up tomorrow and get back to it and do one more day. Yeah. And then I'll be done. The weekend will begin. And we're going to go this weekend, taking my family to Lomita to look at a community we might want to live in. And we're going to take them to a Japanese restaurant in the South Bay called Bento, I think it's called. Which bento means like box lunch in Japan. So it's a bento, but it's spelled weird, Bentu or something like that. And then I'm going to take them there. We're going to get bento, and then we're going to go, if the weather's nice, down to the beach, and Redondo Beach, and have lunch on the beach, because that's going to be our new home eventually. And then we're going to look at open houses. Wouldn't that be awesome to actually be able to buy a house? You know, that's kind of a pipe dream because they're expensive. But, you know, we'll see. Get these cars paid off. My bike's already paid off. And get Emily through college. Maybe there'll be a home in her future. Whoop. Wow, I can't believe I've had this. Hopefully the camera's still on. Woohoo! I know that if I look down right now, I'd knock it off. Fall over on the bike. And once again, if you're still with me, thank you for spending this much time with me. It's fun to do this. Put the bike on its center stand. One, two, there we go. Ta-da! Ta-da! Heater grips off. It's still, the camera is still on. What do you know? Thanks for joining me. And the back camera's still on too. You have a good day. Make it a great life. Make it a good life. Take care. Bye-bye. Sounds like an anticlimactic, but no, take care.